History tells us that advanced technology is recent. That before the modern age, humanity struggled with stone, wood, and muscle. That electricity, precision engineering, and large-scale infrastructure are products of the last few centuries. But the physical world tells a different story. Across lands once labeled Tartaria on old maps, Siberia, Central Asia, Eastern Europe, parts of China, and even North America, structures exist that do not align with the official narrative. They are too large, too precise, too advanced, and most importantly, they are everywhere. To understand Tartaria's technology, we must begin with one simple concept: scale. Not metaphorical scale, physical scale. Because the first thing that breaks the modern explanation is not mystery. It is proportion. Walk through old cities like St. Petersburg, Kazan, Vienna, Prague, or Budapest, and you will notice something strange. Doorways that tower far above a human head. Windows placed several meters above floor level. Massive staircases with steps too tall and too deep for comfortable human use. Columns so thick they could support 10 modern buildings stacked together. We are told these were built for grandeur. But grandeur alone does not explain ergonomics. If a building is meant to be used daily, it reflects the body of its users. And many Tartarian-era structures do not reflect the human body we know today. St. Petersburg is often presented as a triumph of 18th-century Russian engineering. But the city raises uncomfortable questions. The Hermitage, the Winter Palace, and surrounding complexes feature halls with ceilings exceeding 15 meters, doors that dwarf people, and stone floors cut with industrial precision. The granite columns of St. Isaac's Cathedral each weigh over 100 tons, lifted, positioned, and polished with a level of accuracy that challenges modern construction methods. Official history claims these were built with simple cranes and manpower. Yet even today, replicating such work would require heavy machinery, lasers, and advanced logistics. So how was it done? And more importantly, who was it done for? Across Tartarian legends, giants are not described as chaotic beasts. They are builders, organizers, guardians of knowledge. In Central Asian folklore, giants are often credited with founding cities. In Slavic legends, giant ancestors shaped rivers and raised stone halls. In Chinese historical records, ancient, tall people are mentioned in early dynastic texts. These stories are dismissed as metaphor. But architecture does not lie. If Tartaria cities were designed for being significantly larger than modern humans, then giants were not myths, they were users. Another key feature appears again and again: buried lower floors. In cities across Russia, Germany, Italy, and the United States, old buildings show windows and doors below current ground level. Basements with ornate designs. Windows leading into soil. Entrances that clearly were once ground level. Mainstream explanations blame urban development. But this pattern is global. From Moscow to Chicago, from Rome to Beijing, the same phenomenon appears. This suggests not gradual buildup, but sudden burial. A mud flood. If Tartaria was erased by a catastrophic event, its cities may not have been destroyed, only covered. Look at Tartarian-era stonework closely. In Kazan Kremlin, stone blocks interlock with millimeter precision. In Siberian ruins, granite surfaces are polished smoother than modern finishes. In Chinese Tartarian border cities, stone walls show machine-like symmetry. These are not rough medieval constructions. They resemble industrial output. Yet they predate industrial machinery. Modern engineers often argue, with enough labor, anything is possible. But labor does not explain precision. If Tartaria had giants, beings with greater strength, reach, and endurance, then large-scale construction becomes far more plausible. Combine that strength with lost mechanical knowledge, and suddenly the impossible becomes routine. Giants would not need thousands of workers. They would need systems. Evidence suggests Tartaria did not rely on brute force alone. Cities appear aligned with geographic features. Buildings follow harmonic proportions. Materials are selected for durability, resonance, and thermal balance. This points toward an integrated technological philosophy, one that combined architecture, energy, environment, biology. Technology was not separated from life. It was embedded within it. Because acknowledging this changes everything. It means advanced civilizations existed before us. It means history is cyclical, not linear. It means knowledge can be lost, deliberately or accidentally. And most disturbing of all, it means modern humanity may not be the most advanced version of itself. The buildings remain. The proportions remain. The buried floors remain. What disappeared was the explanation. In Part 2, we will move deeper into Tartaria's energy systems, the strange devices atop old buildings, and the possibility that this civilization mastered power without wires, fuel, or centralized control. Because architecture was only the shell. The true technology of Tartaria was invisible. If Tartaria's architecture was built on a different scale, then its power system followed a different logic. Because size alone does not explain functionality. A civilization capable of erecting colossal stone structures, maintaining vast cities, and illuminating streets before modern electricity would require a stable, abundant source of energy. Yet no coal plants were recorded. No oil pipelines existed. No centralized power stations appear in early maps. And still, the cities functioned. Early photographs from the 18th and early 19th centuries reveal something strange. Cities glowing at night. Street lamps evenly spaced. Buildings illuminated from within. Public squares filled with light, long before modern electrical grids were installed. In cities once associated with Tartaria or its former territory, St. Petersburg, Paris, Vienna, Shanghai, San Francisco, we see lighting systems that appear suddenly, fully formed. Official explanations say these were gas lamps. But gas infrastructure leaves evidence. Pipes, valves, maintenance records. In many cases, these are missing. Instead, what we see are tall metal street lamps connected to nothing. Look closely at Tartarian-era buildings. Domes, spires, cupolas, metal finials, ornamental rods. Mainstream history labels them decorative. But decoration alone does not require mathematical repetition. Across continents, these features appear with similar proportions and placement, as if following a universal design principle. In St. Isaac's Cathedral, the massive golden dome is crowned with a metallic structure resembling an antenna. In Kazan, mosques and public buildings show similar metallic crowns. In old Chinese Tartarian cities, pagoda-like structures incorporate layered roofs with metal tips. Different cultures. Same geometry. This suggests function, not coincidence. One hypothesis suggests Tartaria harvested atmospheric electricity. The Earth naturally carries an electrical charge. The ionosphere and ground create a constant electric potential. Modern science acknowledges this, but largely ignores practical applications. What if Tartaria did not? Tall structures, metal components, and stone foundations could act as collectors and conductors. Domes may have amplified resonance. Spires may have drawn charge. Stone structures could stabilize and distribute energy, not through wires, but through the building itself. In old European cities, renovations often remove metal ornaments from rooftops. Why? Because modern safety regulations consider them unnecessary or dangerous. But in doing so, we may be dismantling the last visible traces of an old system. In some cases, when restorations remove these elements, buildings lose unusual properties. Stable temperatures, natural acoustics, or unexplained illumination effects reported in earlier centuries. Energy is not only electrical. Sound is vibration. Vibration is movement. Movement is energy. Tartarian architecture often displays acoustic perfection. In massive halls, whispers carry across enormous distances. In domed structures, sound amplifies evenly without echo distortion. Examples include St. Isaac's Cathedral, Hagia Sophia, ancient Central Asian halls later repurposed. These structures behave like resonant chambers. Some researchers suggest Tartaria used harmonic resonance, converting sound or vibration into usable energy. This would explain large open halls, domes of precise curvature, stone materials chosen for resonance, energy without combustion, power without pollution. If giants existed, their role in this system becomes clearer. Larger bodies interact differently with frequency and vibration. Lower frequencies travel farther. Larger vocal ranges produce stronger resonance. Giants may have naturally interacted with these environments, not as operators, but as components. The civilization was not built for giants alone. It may have been built with them. Another anomaly: heating. Many Tartarian buildings show no fireplaces, chimneys, or soot damage, despite existing in cold climates like Siberia. Instead, structures maintain warmth through thick stone walls, underground chambers, and internal airflow systems. Some underground floors appear intentionally designed, not as basements, but as thermal regulators. Heat may have been distributed through earth insulation, resonant vibration, subterranean airflow. Again, no fuel required. Technology that requires no fuel, no centralized control, and no resource extraction threatens any system built on scarcity. If Tartaria used free or ambient energy, it would undermine economic control. After a global catastrophe, whether flood, climate shift, or war, survivors may not have understood the system they inherited. Without maintenance, it would fail. And once it failed, it would be easier to replace it with simpler systems: coal, gas, wires. Over time, the old system would be forgotten or deliberately ignored. As new powers rose, they inherited Tartaria's cities but not its knowledge. Instead of explaining the impossible, they relabeled it. Advanced lighting became early gas. Precision stonework became hand labor. Energy systems became ornament. Giants became myths. Modern technology is noisy. Engines roar. Factories smoke. Power lines scar landscapes. Tartaria's technology was quiet, integrated, stable, invisible. And that may be why it is so hard to recognize today. The cities were not powered the way we are told. The buildings were not passive. And the giants, if they existed, were not legends. They were part of a system humanity no longer remembers how to use. In Part 3, we will move beyond machines and stone into the mind of Tartaria. Because no civilization reaches this level of harmony without a worldview that shapes how people think, believe, and perceive reality itself. Technology does not begin with tools. It begins with perception. Before engines, before electricity, before architecture, a civilization must first decide how it understands reality. And Tartaria appears to have understood the world very differently from us. Modern civilization is built on domination. We extract energy. We reshape land. We force nature to comply. Tartaria's structures suggest something else. Instead of forcing energy to move, they positioned themselves where energy already flowed. Cities align with rivers, magnetic lines, and natural elevations. Buildings follow harmonic proportions rather than purely defensive logic. This suggests a worldview where humanity was part of a living system, not above it. Ancient texts across Asia, Eastern Europe, and Central Eurasia repeatedly reference heightened states of awareness, not in mystical language alone, but as practical ability. In early Siberian traditions, elders were said to listen to the land. In Central Asian steppe cultures, rulers were chosen based on clarity of mind, not bloodline alone. In early Slavic records, memory and vision were considered skills to be trained. These ideas are often dismissed as spiritual metaphors. But what if they were functional? If giants existed, they were not simply larger humans. Larger bodies imply different brain volume, different sensory processing, different interaction with frequency and vibration. A larger nervous system may perceive subtler environmental signals, sound, electromagnetic shifts, atmospheric pressure changes. Giants may have sensed changes modern humans cannot. This would make them ideal navigators of a world built on resonance and natural energy. Sacred geometry appears everywhere in Tartarian-related structures. Circles, octagons, perfect ratios, golden proportions. Modern education treats these as artistic flourishes. But geometry governs resonance. The shape of a chamber determines how sound moves. The ratio of a structure determines how vibration amplifies. The angle of a dome affects energy flow. Tartarian builders did not decorate with geometry. They engineered with it. In Kazan, ancient buildings show repeated octagonal layouts, a shape known for balance between stability and resonance. In Samarkand, massive domes align with solar and lunar cycles, creating light patterns at specific times of year. In St. Petersburg, street grids follow angular designs that match magnetic declination rather than simple geography. These are not accidents. They reflect an understanding of the planet as an energetic body. Another mystery, the lack of extensive written records. A civilization so advanced should have left libraries. But perhaps Tartaria did not rely on writing the way we do. Oral transmission, memory training, symbolic encoding in architecture. Many ancient cultures trained memory as a skill, capable of retaining enormous amounts of information without text. If knowledge was embedded in ritual, sound, and structure, it would not survive cultural collapse easily. Once the people were gone, the meaning would fade, leaving behind only form. Modern thinking separates ritual from function. But in Tartaria, ritual may have been functional. Chanting alters brainwave states. Group rhythm synchronizes nervous systems. Focused attention affects perception and decision-making. In large resonant halls, collective rituals could amplify these effects dramatically. What we call spiritual practice may have been cognitive technology. Not everyone in Tartaria needed to understand everything. Just as modern society has engineers and operators, Tartaria likely had specialized classes. Giants may have served as architects, resonance regulators, environmental interpreters. Humans may have been collaborators, caretakers of daily life. This was not a hierarchy of domination, but of function. A society that trains awareness instead of obedience is difficult to rule. If people understand their environment, their own minds, natural energy systems, they do not require centralized authority. Such a civilization would not respond well to conquest. And after collapse, those who rose to power would not want this knowledge rediscovered. Over generations, complex systems are simplified. Awareness becomes religion. Resonance becomes superstition. Giants become gods or monsters. By the time written history resumes, the original system is unrecognizable. And so Tartaria is remembered only in fragments. The disappearance of Tartaria's worldview coincides with the rise of centralized empires, standardized education, resource-based economies. A system based on awareness and natural energy does not support these structures. It had to vanish. Tartaria was not advanced because of machines. It was advanced because of how it understood reality. Its technology flowed from perception, its architecture from awareness, its giants from biology aligned with environment. In Part 4, we will confront the most controversial question of all. How and why was Tartaria erased so completely, and who benefited from its disappearance? Civilizations do not simply disappear. They collapse. They fracture. They are absorbed, buried, or erased. Tartaria was no exception. But what makes Tartaria different is not that it vanished. It is how completely it vanished. No clear final war. No single invading empire. No universally recorded downfall. Instead, there is silence. Between the late 17th and mid-19th centuries, something changed. Maps were redrawn. Borders were renamed. Entire regions once labeled Tartaria fragmented into smaller states. At the same time, cities across Eurasia and North America underwent massive reconstruction. Official records describe fires, floods, urban renewal. But the physical evidence suggests something larger. Across former Tartarian lands, the same anomaly appears again and again. Lower floors buried. Windows below ground. Entrances sealed and replaced above. This pattern appears in St. Petersburg, Russia; Moscow, Russia; Kazan, Tatarstan; Vienna, Austria; Prague, Czech lands; Chicago and San Francisco, United States. These are not isolated cases. They form a global pattern. Water floods leave erosion lines, debris scatter, and structural collapse. Mud floods leave buildings intact, but buried. Walls remain upright. Floors remain level. Only the lower portions disappear beneath dense sediment. This suggests a slurry-like event. Soil, clay, and water moving together with enormous force. Something capable of burying cities, not destroying them. Several possibilities exist. Rapid climate shift. Seismic activity causing soil liquefaction. Atmospheric disturbance. Comet or solar event affecting weather patterns. Whatever the cause, the result was the same. Tartaria's cities became partially entombed, and the civilization that understood how to maintain them was gone. After the catastrophe, survivors likely inherited structures they did not understand. Energy systems stopped functioning. Resonant architecture fell silent. Advanced heating and lighting ceased. What remained were massive stone shells. Too complex to replicate. Too useful to abandon. So they were reused. Basements became foundations. Lower floors were sealed. Upper levels were renamed ground level. Old structures were attributed to kings, empires, architects who never lived long enough to build them. History filled the gaps. If giants existed, they would not have survived easily. Larger bodies require more resources, stable environments, functional systems. A global catastrophe would affect them first. Those who survived may have died out naturally, been absorbed into myth, been hunted or feared. Over generations, giants became legends, then fairy tales, then fiction. Once centralized powers rose, history required coherence. A forgotten advanced civilization was inconvenient. So Tartaria was reframed. From civilization, geographic term. From people, tribes. From builders, nomads. Maps changed. Textbooks followed. Tartaria represented free energy, non-centralized systems, awareness-based culture. This contradicted emerging empires built on resource extraction, taxation, industrial labor. A civilization that did not need fuel, factories, or rigid hierarchy could not coexist with industrial control. So its memory faded, or was pushed. If Tartaria never existed, there would be nothing to explain. But explanations exist, scattered, inconsistent, incomplete. Buildings too advanced. Maps too detailed. Legends too consistent across cultures. Silence itself becomes evidence. Tartaria did not fall in one day. It was buried, forgotten, rewritten, its technology dismantled, its giants erased, its worldview replaced. But erasure is never perfect. In Part 5, we will examine what Tartaria left behind, the remnants, the clues, and the structures that still whisper of a world that once understood something we no longer do. Even when a civilization is erased, it never disappears completely. Stone remembers, land remembers, patterns remember, and Tartaria left behind far more than ruins. One of the strangest facts about Tartaria is this: we are still living in its cities. St. Petersburg, Vienna, Paris, Beijing, Istanbul, San Francisco. These cities were not built from nothing. They were inherited. Look at old train stations, government buildings, and cathedrals. Massive halls far larger than necessary. Stone columns built to last thousands of years. Foundations so deep and solid that modern construction still relies on them. These structures are often attributed to the 18th and 19th centuries, but many were simply reused during that time. Renamed, renovated, reassigned. One of the clearest remnants is the global network of star forts. These appear in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, China, North and South America. Perfect geometric designs, massive earthworks, strategic placement along rivers and coasts. Official history calls them military defenses, but their scale and uniformity suggest something more. They may have functioned as energy regulators, resonance stabilizers, infrastructure nodes, not just forts, but part of a planetary system. Maps from the 16th to 18th centuries consistently label vast regions as Tartaria, not as empty land, but as organized territory, with cities, roads, political divisions. Then suddenly, the name disappears, replaced by smaller states. The land did not change, only the story did. Many modern buildings unintentionally copy Tartarian principles. Domes for acoustics, curved walls for airflow, stone for thermal regulation. But without understanding the original system, these designs are incomplete. They imitate the shell, not the function. Across cultures, giant ancestors appear again and again. The Nephilim, the Jotnar, the Titans. The Altan Adam legends of Central Asia. Different names. Same memory. Myths persist because they are rooted in experience. For centuries, Tartaria remained obscure. So why now? Because modern civilization is reaching its limits. Energy scarcity. Environmental collapse. Psychological exhaustion. People are searching for alternatives. And Tartaria represents harmony with environment, energy without destruction, knowledge without domination. It offers a different path. Information that once required institutions now spreads freely. Old maps resurface. Photographs are re-examined. Patterns emerge. Questions once dismissed are now asked openly. And silence is no longer convincing. Remembering Tartaria is dangerous, not because it threatens truth, but because it threatens assumptions. It suggests history is incomplete. Progress is not linear. Humanity has fallen before, and may fall again. It is not about proving giants existed tomorrow. It is about recognizing that our current narrative may be shallow, that something vast once existed, and that forgetting it was not accidental. The remnants are still here. In stone, in maps, in myth, in proportion. Tartaria was not destroyed completely. It was buried and reused. In Part 6, the final part of Episode 2, we will confront the most important question of all. What does Tartaria mean for us today, and what happens if we truly remember? Tartaria is not only about the past. It is a mirror, a reflection of what humanity once was, and what it may become again. Modern society is built on one core belief. Progress is linear. We are taught that humanity began primitive, slowly climbed upward, and now stands at the peak of intelligence and technology. Tartaria challenges this belief completely. It suggests that advanced civilizations can exist without industry. Knowledge can be lost, not accumulated. Collapse is part of the human cycle, and that forgetting is sometimes engineered. Tartaria's legacy hints at a different technological philosophy. Energy without fuel. Architecture without pollution. Cities integrated into natural systems. If such a civilization existed, then modern humanity did not invent progress. It replaced something else, and replaced it with systems that demand constant extraction, labor, and control. Whether giants were literal beings or a misunderstood branch of humanity, their presence matters. They represent a different biological potential, a different relationship with the environment, a reminder that humanity may once have been more diverse. Erasing giants simplifies history, and simplified history is easier to govern. When Tartaria disappeared, something else vanished with it. Environmental harmony, awareness-based education, technology that did not depend on scarcity. What replaced it was efficient, but fragile. Centralized power grids, industrial dependency, disconnection from nature, systems that break easily. Modern civilization faces a crossroads. Energy crises, climate instability, mental exhaustion. We are searching for solutions inside the same framework that created the problem. Tartaria suggests another framework existed, one that observed nature instead of conquering it, used resonance instead of combustion, valued awareness instead of obedience. Remembering Tartaria does not mean rebuilding its cities. It means rebuilding how we think, how we define progress, how we measure intelligence, how we interact with the planet. The greatest technology Tartaria may have left behind is not stone. It is perspective. The idea that humanity has fallen before is unsettling. It removes the comfort of superiority. It reminds us that collapse is possible, and that knowledge, once lost, may never return in the same form. That is why Tartaria remains controversial, not because it is dangerous, but because it is humbling. Civilizations rise. They peak. They fall. Some are remembered. Some are buried. Tartaria was buried deeply, but not deeply enough. Because stone endures. Patterns endure. Questions endure. If Tartaria existed, then history is not finished being written. If giants walked among us, then humanity's story is incomplete. And if the past was more advanced than we are told, then the future may depend on what we choose to remember. This episode explored technology, not as machines, but as understanding. In Episode 3, we will go even deeper into the global reset, the repeating patterns of collapse, and the unsettling possibility that Tartaria was not the first lost world, only the most recent.